for everyone's, just a reminder to everyone.
So Chair Millward, the meeting is now live, so you can call the meeting to order.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm calling the meeting to order. My name is Hugh Millward, and we'll begin with the roll call. And I'm going to actually just call people's name, and if you can just respond and say hello or something so that we can see that the audio is working. Okay, so Councillor Becky Kent. Becky?
Yes, thank you. I'm just
Okay.
fiddling with my mute button. I am here.
Very good. Annika Rappel.
Yeah, hi, I'm here.
Did I pronounce that right?
Riopel, but it's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Miles McCormick.
Here, Hugh. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Miles. Paul Berry. No response from Paul. Andrew Taylor.
Yes, hi.
Hi, Andrew. We know that Milena Casanovicius cannot make this meeting. She sends her regrets. Elizabeth Pugh.
Yes, she is here.
Yeah. We don't hear you, Elizabeth. Peter Zimmer. Peter waves his hand.
I'm here.
Alison Carlisle.
Yeah, I'm here. And
Alison.
Elizabeth is here. She said she was muting for the beginning, so.
Okay. Mohammed Ehsan. Mohammed is not with us. Oh, no. Douglas Wetmore, our vice chair.
Present. Thank you, Hugh.
Hi, Douglas. And myself as chair. We also hopefully will have staff members joining us. Has David McIsaac joined yet? I see. David, hello. Okay, I see he's there, but we don't have sound.
Enter the meeting password followed by pound.
Okay.
You have not entered any numbers. Please re-enter the meeting password followed by pound.
I guess.
So Chair Millward, I think David's probably just joined by phone. So
Oh, I see.
So it just might take a little bit before he's able to respond.
Yeah, I understand.
But he
Okay.
is.
Okay, our committee clerk is Andrea Lavassi Wood, and legislative support is Alicia Wall. So that's our roll call, and the land acknowledgement. I'll just read that out. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. Excuse me. So we'll move on to item 2 in the agenda, which is approval of the minutes from November 18th, 2021. Those were circulated, draft minutes were circulated. Do any committee members notice any errors or omissions? Hearing none, I'll call for a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll move. Andrew.
Andrew, and we need a seconder for that. Becky, was it? Is seconding, and then I'll call the question. All those in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 And any opposed, say nay or raise your hand. None opposed, so the minutes are approved as circulated. Item 3 is approval of the order of business and approval of any additions or deletions to the order of business. Andrea, have there been any additions or deletions?
There's no additions or deletions to the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
But I would like to make note that Milena had asked that item 8.1.2, which is a staff presentation regarding HRM's accessibility design considerations within the right-of-way, be deferred to the March 17th meeting.
Yes, and with regard to that, Milena is the person who asked for that information coming from staff in the first place. And she has a special interest in that topic. And for that reason, I would recommend that the committee approve taking that item off from tonight's agenda and putting it on the March agenda.
I'll move deferral of that item, Mr. Chair.
Okay, that's been moved by Becky. Anyone wish to second to that?
I can second that, Hugh.
Okay, thank you, Douglas. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Say aye. Any opposed? Say nay. Okay, that's very good. We have now deferred that item to the March committee meeting. And with that change, I will now, or I guess do any members wish to move items within the agenda this evening, or can we stick with the agenda as published? Or hearing none, then I need a motion to approve the agenda as modified.
So moved.
Thank you, Peter. Any seconder for that?
I will, Andrew.
Okay, and all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Okay, that's the meeting agenda is approved as amended. Number 4, business arising out of the minutes. There is none. So we'll move on to item 5, call for declaration of conflicts of interest. If committee members feel they have a conflict of interest to declare, now is the time to do so. Hearing none, we can proceed with item 6, consideration of deferred business. Again, there is no deferred business. And item 7, correspondence, petitions, and delegations. With regard to correspondence, Andrea, has there been any correspondence received through the clerk's office?
Chair Millward, no correspondence has been received by the clerk's office for this meeting.
Okay, thank you. And petitions, again, I'll ask Andrea if any petitions have been submitted to the clerk's office.
No, Chair Millward, no petitions have been received for this meeting.
Okay, and committee members, have any petitions been brought forward to you?
No.
No? Okay, that's fine then. So we'll move on to item 8, which is reports, discussions, and updates. And we'll begin with staff, and particularly with David McIsaac, who will present an update on active transportation projects and plans. And David did say that he would address, at least briefly, the issue of snow removal relating to active transportation. And I do want to remind you that the winter operations service standard review was circulated to you, and it included the KPMG report relating to active transportation. So David, if you're ready, would you please proceed?
For sure. Can you confirm that you can hear me?
Not very well. It's a little low.
All right. Well, I will proceed, and please interrupt me if you can't hear.
Okay.
So from a staff update perspective, I'll just give you, I think there's some good presentations coming, so I don't want to take up too much time, but I'll just highlight some of what's been happening in our group recently. In terms of sort of accomplishments or moving the bar forward, I guess a couple of weeks ago at council, we had a couple of approvals from council. First was approval of a kind of a framework and an approach to having a rural sidewalk program. I guess for folks on the call right now, if a community is outside of what we call the urban tax rate, sidewalks are not considered part of the the services that they pay for in their taxes. So in places like say Porter's Lake, Musquodoboit Harbor, Hubbard's, Middle Musquodoboit, places like that, there's often been desires for sidewalks, but we haven't really had a mechanism to implement them. So we now have some direction from council on that. Doesn't mean the sidewalks will be built this summer, but I think we've set a target to get 5 or more built over the next 10 years, and that's sort of how we are framing the program. We also at that same meeting had approval of the Almond Street protected bike lane. So that is a part of the AAA network, and we can now sort of continue our planning and their work on that. We are going to come back to council on sort of the eastern and western extremities of that facility, and with some other ideas about extending it further to Gottingen and down to Connaught. So the group is super busy right now. I would say on the public engagement side, we've had to delay some things because of COVID, but as soon as we can have at least some modified in-person engagement, we will be doing some work on the Africville AT connections, public engagement there. Public engagement on the Peninsula South Complete Streets project that includes University Avenue, Morris Street, and sort of the southern end of Roby. North Preston, we have just finished a functional plan there, have done quite a bit of community engagement, but we want to go one more time in the community just to sort of report out. And then East Preston and in Lucasville, we've got some projects that are fairly well advanced that we need to bring back to the community for sort of, final information sharing and kind of some final input on what we should prioritize. I guess sort of big picture within the municipality right now, it's very much budget season in terms of presenting those projects to council, getting approval, and then on the capital project side of things, getting our projects ready to tender if they're in the budget for this year. I'd say generally for active transportation, there's not a huge change in the scope and scale of projects. Our budgets are fairly consistent. But what I might do at the next meeting or the meeting after is potentially sort of, usually once a year at these meetings, I kind of take folks through the budget and just kind of highlight some of the projects and that kind of thing. So happy to do that whenever. And I might just leave it at that. And happy to take any questions on that or anything else that might be on folks' minds.
Okay. Well, I do have a speaking list here, and the idea of the speaking list is to allow everyone an equal chance to have their say. So I'll just go through the speaking list and let me know if you have, or let David know if you have questions or concerns. And so we'll start.
May I just interrupt for a quick
Well, you're
moment?
first anyway, Becky.
Oh, am I? Oh, okay. I just wanted to introduce Councillor David Hensby has joined the meeting, and he has a vested interest in what we're talking about. I just wanted to acknowledge that he may have comments or something of that nature.
Okay, we'll give Councillor Hensby a chance later on. But we'll start with you,
Okay.
Becky.
I'll be pretty short because I just want to say that how pleased I am to have seen this come forward within Transportation Standing Committee. The rural councillors are active regularly, and they have been in all of my experiences on council, around equalizing some of the opportunities to have infrastructure in their communities. So items such as sidewalks and or paved shoulders and active transportation, all of those things, they've been hard fought for. And the complications around funding them, of course, is always something that most residents aren't necessarily fully aware of. So this direction that council has given to David and the team, is to come back. We've given them we had many options of what kind of formulas or approaches we could take, several, I should say, not many, but several. And we've given them a direction of where most councillors were in favor of. So that information is still yet to come. It's a case of, like anything in the municipality, your taxpayers' dollars are required to create these infrastructures in our communities. And this will bring that new space to the rural areas. And I'm very pleased to see it come forward.
Very good. So that's a resounding endorsement. Annika, do you have any questions or concerns?
I just had a question about the Almond Street bikeway and whether or not there's consideration with the connector through the north end to the downtown. I know that plan is being revisited, but when, is that a big factor in some of the conversations right now?
It is a factor. So those routes would kind of intersect right now at Iceville and Almond Street, and probably what we'll see in the implementation of this project is sort of an improvement there in terms of a crossing at Almond at Iceville, and then we're going to come back in a year with probably a bit more of some options for other options for Almond Street, and that would also be considered, but very much part of as we build out these segments of the network, how they connect with the other segments is a really big part of it.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Miles, do you have any questions or concerns?
Not so much questions, but just comments. I'm really pleased to see that there is advancement on the active transportation planning for the rural areas. So it's something for all of us to look forward and to enjoy down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Miles. Paul Berry? No, I guess we don't have Paul. Andrew Taylor?
Well, until about 5 years ago, I lived in Middle Musquodoboit, and the idea that we would have a paved shoulder or sidewalk is absolutely astounding and wonderful. I know for a fact that it will be appreciated by the entire square. So thank you very much for considering us, or them, one or the other. That is it, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Elizabeth Pugh, any questions or concerns? No? Peter Zimmer?
Yes, hi, David.
Peter, this is Andrea speaking. Sorry.
Oh, excuse me. Andrea, yes?
We're having problems with Peter's audio, so it might help if he turns off his video. It might improve his audio reception.
Okay, we'll try that.
Okay.
I'll speak. Yeah. I would like to add a fourth A to the AAA policy, and I'd say that would be all season. We're in the winter season. I'm a sometimes winter bicyclist, and I'm not altogether happy with what I see on the ground. I'm seeing sometimes half of a paint-defined bike lane on Windsor Street is more than half filled 2 weeks after a snowstorm. The road crew plow has plowed that up, and nobody has cleared off that. So we effectively do not have Windsor Street bike lanes. I'd like to say the seasonal aspect of the whole snow clearing for sidewalks, for intersections, all of that really needs an update. I don't think it's up to the planning department to do this, but I think we need to be talking to the council and to the transportation committee to say it should be better. It should be moved up the priority scale and should work with real feedback from real users of it, i.e. people who walk on the sidewalks in the 48 hours after a heavy snowstorm. People who want to cross North Street with a flashing yellow sign whose go button is entirely inaccessible for as long as 48 hours after a not even terrible snowstorm. So that's my passing on to the planners and to the whole committee. I think it's an important aspect of our system, and we can't ignore it.
Do you have a response, David?
No, I don't have a direct response. I mean, just because it's, it's not something that I'm directly involved with. I can talk a little bit, about how we work with that group and how we involve them in our planning projects, and they involve me in their update to the winter work standards. But, I think, definitely going through your counselor, sending specific issues into 311 so at least they're logged. And I think that's all I have to say on that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, you
just
can
one
respond.
comment. I think it may be appropriate for our committee to ask for some report from the operational end of the snow clearing thing. I'd like to know, sort of who's responsible, who's doing any kind of follow-up. Is it always the same crew running the little machines? Do they have the right equipment? And yes, that's not planning. That's another part of the city. I'd like us to ask to say, we'd like to hear about that in some detail and should be able to share comments with them. Okay.
I think that's possible, Peter. I think there was some back and forth with the Winter Works folks, and I suspect they'd be, willing to come back at some point. I think, and what would be probably really helpful is just to have some information exchange as well. Maybe break down a little bit of some of the unknowns about some of the processes and some of the techniques and some of the typical challenges that they kind of face on the ground. I will say that there has been, an investment in equipment, smaller equipment, some of the latest stuff. There's a willingness to experiment, but it's, how the streets get cleared and sidewalks get cleared and the bike lanes get cleared and the pathways get cleared. It's a complicated thing, and I am not the best person to kind of delve into that. But I do find, as I do talk to those folks, and certainly when the winter works standards were reviewed, learned a lot, just about the ins and outs of how they are able to do their job and some of the challenges. And I think it's important also that they're hearing directly from folks like you. So hopefully we can create an opportunity for that dialogue.
Can I speak to that, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, just very quickly. I too, Peter, I think that I just want to remind everyone of the importance of, there is your questions that you put forward and the request for consideration of our snow folks coming here. Of course, we're in the middle of snow season, so it's more challenging because this is the times when they're actually out on the roads doing all the things that they can be doing when it's less busy. But they did identify that road operation standards document that they follow as their guide is going to be reviewed in the next year or so. So it is coming for review. It is coming for opportunities for some input to go forward. There's always the opportunity for residents and or organizations at large that have an interest in sharing some perspectives that should get funneled into staff through even earlier than that review period is through a presentation through the Transportation Standing Committee. Here, we don't specifically have the ability to ask for reports and such. That's not the mandate of this particular committee. So what I would suggest that we do is that if there is an interest to have some input into the standing committee or to council, that each of the members here tonight take the time, those of you who have an interest, to review what's at play right now and then identify some gaps. It might be that as a group that you could put something together and submit it to the Transportation Standing Committee for consideration. I suspect as well that there will be through that review, there will be, it'll be focused and communicated that we are looking at it again, and this group wouldn't be the only ones we'd hope to hear from. The other thing that we have is as time goes on, we all know storm events are changing, and even just now, since January, it's been rough. And so our snow and road operations folks, they're dealing with different volumes and different scenarios. The kind of ice that we got is coming more often. So we have to evolve, they have to evolve and change as our climate is changing as well. So, all that input is important. We just want to make sure we do it in a way that is going to get to the right location. So I really encourage everyone here to on this committee to take the time to review that standards that we've got now, so we're more prepared when the time comes that we can really engage well on it.
Thank you, Becky. Yeah, we should probably just complete our roll call here. Alison Carlisle, did you have any questions or concerns?
I do have a question. I just want a bit of background, David. I seem to remember that it was called at one point a rural AT strategy, and now it's called the rural sidewalk strategy. And maybe I've got that wrong, but can you just give a quick little history of maybe if that changed or where that changed, and if there's any conversation going on right now about enabling cycling at all in rural communities?
For sure. That's a good question, and that actually gives me an opportunity to give a little bit more of a complete picture. So what our rural AT strategy that we took to council, I guess a couple of weeks ago has sort of three elements. One is the continuation of what we do now in rural HRM, which is supporting community. Mostly it is about supporting community groups that have letters of agreement from the province to operate and build and maintain and everything else that goes along with it, sort of the network of Maltese Pathways, the rails to trails. So, from Beachville, Lakeside, Timberley, St. Margaret's Bay, on the eastern shore, the Saltwater Marsh, Atlantic View, Blueberry Run, Gatesbrook, Muscatawba Trailways, and then there's more. So we'll continue to do that. Then what we said is, as the priority, I guess, and the element that we needed to bring some options to council in terms of tax changes was for those community center sidewalks. And those are going to be facilities that are about 1 kilometer, maybe 2 kilometers, depending on the community long. And those can either be sidewalks or they can be Maltese pathways. In law, in kind of the Motor Vehicle Act, a Maltese pathway, or what some of us call trails, that's in the road or in the right of way, is really just a sidewalk that has been built wider and that the traffic authority has designated as appropriate for both pedestrian and bicycle use. And so when we go to implement this program in those 5, 6, 7, however many communities it becomes, part of the planning process will be to figure out if, a sidewalk is the best thing to put there, or if a Maltese Pathway is the best thing to put there. So that's the second element. Now, the third one was sort of this idea of spines. So, facilities that would connect rural communities in kind of rural HRM. And what we said there is that we would continue to look to implement those more on an ad hoc basis and as a lesser priority than those community center sidewalks. So, what that could look like in implementation could be simply sitting back and watching the province put paved shoulders on their own segments of those spines. It could include, if it makes sense, actually building separated facilities, and that really depends on the context and certainly on the resources available. On the rural HRM roads, it might mean that when we go in to rehabilitate them, we would widen the shoulders if we could. Or maybe there'd be some provincial municipal collaboration, kind of depending on the situation. But that would, that'd be sort of on a case-by-case basis. So those are kind of the three elements. And so in terms of bicycling, certainly that spine part is about bicycling, and well, certainly the community stuff about bicycling. I think a lot of those segments are even Blue Route, and in the community centers as well, those could end up being appropriate for bicycles as well. It's just sort of what we'll learn when we go into those communities. And you could see something like they have in Sheet Harbor, which is sort of a traditional sidewalk, or you could see something like, I don't know, where you see in some parts of Bedford West, for example, where the Maltese Pathway is just above the curb.
Perfect. Thanks for breaking that down, David.
Okay.
Very welcome.
So proceeding, Douglas Wetmore, do you have any comments?
Yeah, just a few quick comments. First of all, very excited to see how the rural sidewalk program is going to evolve. Looking forward to hearing more on that. I want to echo a handful of Peter's concerns regarding the Almond Street bikeway or bike lane, and making sure that we are kind of planning that for changes to how snowfall in Halifax has landed in the past few years. So I think we can kind of put a little bit more consideration into how it's designed, to how we can better plow it out, as he was trying to echo. And if I'm understanding Becky correctly, I absolutely love your idea of maybe bringing together the revised plan, or talks about the revised plan on sidewalk and just snow clearing around HRM in general, and potentially bringing that up to the committee and maybe having a full course discussion at some point where appropriate.
Okay.
Otherwise, no other questions from me.
Okay, we'll just finish with me. 2 points I'd like to just make. One is I did read quite a lot of the report that was circulated, including that lengthy KPMG report. And I was impressed with the reports and how detailed they were, but I was not impressed with the final recommendations, which I thought were basically minimized the extra expense and avoided the extra expense by only slightly raising standards, recommending raising standards. So I agree that we probably do need a lengthier discussion of this. And if possible, we can get someone from Winter Operations to come and speak with us. I'll just finish by saying I'm also very supportive of the idea, at least for the larger rural centers, which are designated in the regional plan, of putting in sidewalks. And I'm very familiar with the one in Sheet Harbor, and it's really made a difference. It makes it feel like a town instead of just a village or community. And the same thing could happen in Muscatobit Harbour or Middle Muscatobit, for example, or Hubbards. And I think those are all designated centres. So I fully endorse what's happening there. Okay, thank you very much then, David. And we're going to move on now to 8.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes.
Sorry for the interruption, but I believe Councillor Hensby may have some further questions
sorry.
about
Yes,
the
you're
North
right.
Preston plan.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me. Councillor Hensby, do you have any comments or comments relating to David's report?
Yes, thank you. I was trying to find my unmute button there. Yeah, I was just tuning in when David mentioned about the North Preston Active Transportation Plan, and I was trying to get an update in regards to where it is currently and what future consultation we need to do with the community. Because my understanding, we're about 95% design ready, but just have to finalize some property matter issues or road alignment issues. So I'd like to know, what is the final step before we put the tender out? Because I even have local contractors in the community asking when this work might be done.
Sure. So I guess two things there. One, so there's the North Preston Active Transportation Plan, and that's almost finished. But in what will probably go down in history as the fastest implementation ever coming out of a plan, we're gonna improve we're gonna add a sidewalk and some transit connections and some curb and some trees to Kane Street in North Preston. And cool little project that's gonna, it's gonna connect daycare, community center, elementary school, soccer field, the whole thing. And it's, in terms of, we're aiming to tender it, I think, so that we can build it this summer. There's no property issues that I know. I think there were some, final details to figure out at some point. But yeah, we got money for that one in the budget, and it's looking pretty good to tender soon. There's a letter going out to residents in the community that I think you will be copied on. We'll send you a copy regardless, pretty soon, just to update folks about, what's happening and what to expect and who to call if they have any questions.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor. So now we'll move on to item 8.1.2, which is the staff presentation. This is the one that we've decided to put through to March. So that's the accessibility design considerations presentation. So thank you to Anne Sherwood for being here earlier, at least, I think, and we'll hear from her in March. So we're now on to 8.1.3, which is a staff presentation on the Africville Active Transportation Functional Plan, and Megan Bekos will be presenting that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Backus. I'm an active transportation planner with HRM. Also project manager for the Africville Active Transportation Connections project. So I'm going to share the presentation up on my screen now. Can everyone see that first slide?
Yeah.
Okay, so like I said, I'm the HRM project manager for this Africville AT project. A lot of people in this committee might be aware of the project or have heard of it. It's kind of been going on for a little while. So this one was initiated back in late 2018. But we have had a couple of delays along the way that have kind of stretched it out into where we are now. So firstly, we had some feedback from community leaders early on about, how we wanted to take on the project and maybe think about how to incorporate other engagement around some other transportation modes. So, we took a bit of a step back to think about that internally before going back out to the community. And then in the past couple of years, we've had, obviously some COVID delays that have really been affecting the engagement. So we've, a couple delays there as well. But we're finally at a point where we do have, we've been able to get out and do some public engagement, which happened in October of last year. So we were able to do a couple in-person sessions and some online webinars to get some feedback there. And we're at a point where we have a preferred route as well as facility options that both the public and our project team would prefer for this route. So we have also hired WSP, as you can see up there on the presentation, as our consultant for the project. So they've been with us since late 2018 working on it. And Courtney Pine is here today as the project manager on the WSP side for this. And she's going to be giving a bit of a more in-depth presentation about the work that we've done so far and what our next steps are going to be to finish up the functional plan. So yeah, without further ado, I'll pass things over to Courtney.
Fantastic, just confirming with the thumbs ups that you guys can hear me.
Yes.
Awesome, fantastic. So thanks, Megan, for the little intro there. So my name is Courtney Pine. I'm a traffic and transportation engineer with WSP, and I'm working with, of course, HRM and Megan on this exciting project. So we'll jump to the next slide. A little bit of background is, of course, Africville is a National Historic Site, and it was a designated National Historic Site back in 1997. And one of the true character defining elements of this project is that they wanted to have continued public access to the site. However, as if you've traveled through this area, there currently is no formally designated pedestrian or cyclist access to the site. So therefore, if you do want to gain access currently to the Africville National Historic Site in the nearby area, you'd have to walk down a section of Barrington Street without sidewalk and illegally cross the CN Railway. So of course, we like to improve that. Next slide. So how this project kind of, I guess, say, began was that the project was initiated by an accessibility petition that was brought on by the Africville Museum. So this petition recognized that there are currently no formal pedestrian facilities that connect the National Historic Site to the HRM sidewalk and the Halifax Transit Network as well. So of course, this here then brought on the project by HRM, and of course, they pulled us in to help out with the functional plan. Next slide. So what was our project, or what is our project? So we were asked to look at connections to the Africville National Historic Site, and it was broken down into 3 project phases. So the first phase was to review the 3 proposed potential routes that were identified by HRM. We then determined the preferred route based on those 3 to look at the AAA lens, so all ages and abilities, and its accessibility. And then the stage that we're currently in right now is preparing the functional design for the preferred facility. Next slide. So as Megan kind of alluded to, we've been involved with this project since 2018. We've had a couple of pauses here. So on the screen here is just kind of illustrating what we've done since that start date. So we did start in December of 18. We did have some did a sidewalk and did some stakeholder workshopping. We met with some external stakeholder meetings as well in December 18, as well as early in 19. Then we got put on pause. So then what we did is we reconvened in December of 2020. And of course, we re-met with those external stakeholders and utilities and property owners just to ensure that we were all up to, I guess you could say, up to date with any of their projects that were ongoing or information. So then we really kicked the project back off at that point. So we were able to complete our review of the existing conditions. We developed those concept options, as I mentioned before, and then we did go to the public and also re-engage the stakeholder engagement group to gain some feedback. So we met with some advocacy groups there in October, and we also completed some community pop-ups and some online webinars late October. Next slide. Why am I here today? Well, we're here to provide a project update, show and review the public engagement results that were received, get some feedback and comments from the group here today, and also let you know kind of like what's next for the project. Next slide. Alrighty, so those 3 routes that we talked about before is shown on the screen here through A, B, and C. So A is looking to build a connection from Glebe Street through up to Barrington Street and then down through Africville Road. What we wanted to note here is it's fantastic to extend that connection on Barrington Street down to Niobe Gate. However, our scope did stop at Glebe Street. However, in our report, we are mentioning the benefits there of that connection and for it to be a future project done by HRM. Option B, which is shown in green, is to look at building a connection from the Novalee Drive down through to the Africville Lookoff Park and then a connection through Africville Road. The third option, which is illustrated by C and in pink, is to build a connection to Africville Lookoff Park and Africville Road by utilizing the formal railway corridor. There we go. That runs parallel currently to Memorial Drive. One thing to note, D is in black because D is being looked at for all three options. So A, B, and C did include D for all those options. D is looking at building the connection from Africville Road through to the Africville Museum. And again, that was looked at A, B, and C. It wasn't kind of a contender for an option. It was kind of like guaranteed it was going to happen. Next slide. So after completing preliminary feedback from stakeholders, as well as looking at the different options and kind of looking through a general criteria list there, we provided a recommended primary route to further look into in regards to design options. What was selected is A, so that's building a connection on Barrington Street to Glebe with that future extension to Niobe Gate. And of course, Project D, which is building that connection from Africville Road down through to the Africville Museum. Since it's there and it's nearby and there's an opportunity here, we also wanted to flag Project B. So that there would be an extension along the existing or the high track that's currently accessed by the McKay Bridge. So of course, they have currently an access road there for access to their piers and their abutment maintenance. But we thought if that could be updated, it would be a great connection to the bottom of Novalee. One thing to note though, there's a very steep connection there from Novalee Drive through down. So of course it doesn't meet that AAA lens, but it still is a great connection to complete that loop. So we wanted to include that. Next slide. So now we're really going to dive into and focus in on that Project A. So of course, we've selected Project A and D to further look into. Now we're going to talk about three different segments here. So what we're focusing on is segment 1 is mainly focused in the Africville National Historic Site today. Section 2 is pretty much going from the parking lot there at Africville National Historic Site and making our connection up to Africville and Barrington Street. And then section 3 is going from that point there at Africville and Barrington through to Barrington at that Glebe Street location. So we're going to dive into each of these chunks now. Next slide. All right, so option 1, we really want to utilize what is currently there and enhance it or upgrade it accordingly. So this option here only does look at one option. So what we're recommending, shown in that green highlight color, is that is illustrating a Maltese Pathway. So we're making that recommendation from the Africville Museum to kind of make its way through the Africville National Historic Site Park that's there and make a connection over to the east parking lot. This would be an asphalt surface, and of course it would utilize some of the existing trails that are currently there and of course make additional connections. So in the next slide here, we actually see a cross section that illustrates what the Maltese Pathway could look like. So we'd love to have that 3 to 3.5 meter wide asphalt surface. That's a nice, comfortable size to allow for multiple users on this pathway. Also, it being asphalt allows for better winter maintenance and also to be able to be clear during the winter seasons and used. That's option 1. So we're going to jump into option 2 now. Next slide. So just a refresher, we're now in the middle here. So next slide. Thank you. This option here, we wanted to look at a couple different options. So we looked at 2 different facility options with connection from the east parking lot up through the Africville and Barrington intersection. So if you can follow the green again, that's still a multi-use pathway facility, meaning an asphalt surface for all users. What we're illustrating here is one would go from the east parking lot. That line there, of course, we're under the bridge here, so we're not crossing the bridge, we're actually under. We then would cross Africville Road at an at-grade crossing, meaning a marked crosswalk on the roadway. We then would have to cross the railway crossing there, so the CN track. So again, that would be at grade. And then we make our way up the hill on Africville Road to connect into the Africville and Barrington intersection. So that's option 2A. Option 2B is the exact same routing. However, once we cross the road there, from the east parking lot, that would actually change to be a sidewalk facility. I'm sure people on this call are wondering, like, what do you mean? It's AAA, that's what the goal was. However, we did hear some feedback. They wanted to see a sidewalk option. So we wanted to ensure that we met everyone's kind of comments and feedback there. So that's why we're seeing the sidewalk option here. We did look at one more option, which is completely different than these two options here. Next slide. Oh, sorry, apologies. Here are two cross sections that could illustrate what option 2A and 2B could look like. So again, option 2A, as you can see, is a 3 meter, if we could fit it, a 3.5 meter asphalt surface, whereas option B here is illustrating that 1.8 meter sidewalk facility. Let me go to the next slide. It's option 2C. So this option here is a little bit different than what you just saw. So again, starting at the east parking lot in the top left corner of the image, we actually would ramp up either on this side here or on the other side of the parking lot and actually cross both Africville Road and the railway at a separated crossing, meaning a bridge structure would actually cross over. So similar to like any pedways that you see or any other pedestrian bridge styles. So what we're seeing here is on the bottom of the page is just an example of what that AT bridge could look like. But essentially what it means is that we're crossing both the roadway and the tracks above. So we're not at grade. So to do that, we're able to actually use the high track. So the green line there kind of proceeding after you cross the AT bridge and make your way over to the Africville Road and Barrington Street intersection, we're actually utilizing the old high track there. So it's currently a little bit more of a footpath. I did mention that the McCabe Bridge maintenance vehicles do use this roadway for access to the piers and their abutments for maintenance, but this area here could be upgraded accordingly with the asphalt surface multi-use pathway for use by both, of course, our active transportation users and of course, maintenance vehicles as needed. On the next slide here, we'll see a cross section again, illustrating that 3 to 3.5 meter wide asphalt surface. That is our main goal for this. As I mentioned before, the asphalt will be easier to be maintaining in the winter months. Next slide. So just another view. So we've gone through option 1, which was through the park. Option 2, we made our way up from the east parking lot through up to Africville and Barrington Street intersection. Now we're going to go from Africville, Barrington Street intersection through to Glebe Street there and see what our options are. Next slide. Perfect. Similar to what we just saw for option 2A and 2B, we have that same option here for 3A and 3B. So 3A is focusing on having a multi-use pathway on the water side or the north side of Barrington Street. So to do so, coming from the previous facility, we'd have a marked crossing here to cross Africville. We then would continue on the north side of Barrington Street and make our way down to the nearest transit stop, which is identified there. And at that location there, we'd have another marked crossing. However, this one would be crossing Barrington Street to connect into the existing sidewalk facility. The exact same routing is done for option 3B. However, instead of it being a multi-use pathway, it'd be a sidewalk facility. Again, it was just asked for early in the engagement to kind of see the variety of facility types, and that's why we're seeing both options here today. One thing to note, of course, is that we did hear that it'd be great for option 3A or 3B, but of course 3A would make the most sense, would actually to be extended down to Niobe Gate to connect into the Barrington Greenway. So that is what we heard, and of course we'll be reflecting that in our report. Next slide. Here are some examples of the cross sections of what that could look like. So of course you have your 2 lanes on Barrington, and of course you'd have your multi-use pathway on one side or the option of a sidewalk. Next slide. So again, I just wanted to touch base on that. Remember how I mentioned that we had the option B as kind of tagged into these 2 options here that we're recommending? The reason is that if option 2C, which is that bridge AT crossing, is selected, as you can see, the black dashed line there on your screen that's illustrated by option 2C actually has a connection to the high track that extends into the Africville Lookoff Park. It's currently like a footpath, and sometimes can get muddy and full of water. However, there's already a path there for us that we might be able to improve. This section may be a crusher dust pathway, or it might be able to get paved and of course maintained to the winter. As we can see here from Novalee Drive down into the Africville Lookoff Park, it's illustrated by a black line. That's just more so illustrating that's an existing pathway, and it actually is a paved surface. So if we could, it'd be desirable to have that green as a paved or an asphalt multi-use pathway. So as I did mention, we did go to the public. We had some great turnout. We had 284 participant submissions. They're broken down through the Shape Your City submissions. We had some dedicated questions and comments through their webinar, some engagement written comments there through a pop-up. And of course, there was a couple emails there that were sent off to Megan at HRM. Next slide. A couple things. I'm not going to read everything on this page. There's actually a second page here, but the main thing that we heard from the public is that there is still a need for public transit to get to Africville site. They want to ensure that the facilities that are being built are accessible for persons who utilize mobility devices. The need for access from the Africville Bridge to Bedford Highway connection, the Windsor Street Exchange project was brought up. And of course, that is a nearby project that's on the go. We'll go next slide. There were some comments here about this could be actually providing an opportunity to revitalize the Africville Lookoff Park and enhance it further with easier connections being made. There's some concerns about that Route C, which is that high, probably the formal rail line there, about privacy concerns. And just that, of course, one comment here was need to have the route removed as much as possible from bridge access lanes and ramps, just kind of get it away from the vehicle traffic and more of a greenway feel. So on to the next slide. So what we did here in general is that the recommended primary route that was presented, which is A, with a potential combination of B and D, was actually 75% people were agreed that this is a great option to continue looking into. Next slide. This is a quick snapshot breaking down those options we just reviewed. So option 1A, 2A, 2B, and 2C, and then 3A and 3B is at the bottom here. Essentially what this is kind of illustrating for us is it's showing us what the public was more happy with, or I guess you could say more satisfied with in regards to the options. So at the very top, what we see here is the light green and the dark green is illustrating that 69% were satisfied with the proposed option for option 1. What we saw for segment 2 is actually option 2C, which is that at-grade bridge crossing, and then that more of that greenway path along Africville being removed from Africville Road, was actually quite well received as well, with around 60%. And then for segment 3, the multi-use pathway option from the Africville-Barrington Street intersection through to Glebe Street was most preferable, with close to 65% satisfaction. Next slide. This is a quick summary. What we heard, as well as based on the preferred concepts, is that we'd have a multi-use pathway facility that would continue from the Africville Museum down beginning at option 1. We would then have a separated AT bridge crossing to cross Africville Road and the CN tracks. It would continue as a multi-use pathway and more of a greenway feel off-road. And then we would connect into Barrington Street on the northern side with the multi-use pathway with connection down to Glebe Street. So what we're doing is kind of our next steps here is we're looking and of course completing our evaluation criteria and all these options here to further detail kind of how we came to the preferred option that was selected. So some of the feedback that we'll see in the report itself will be the connectivity and directness that we compared for these options, the comfort for the active transportation users, safety and accessibility. What are some of the impacts both to traffic, transit, and rail in this case, utilities and property owners. We took into account public and key stakeholder feedback response. Of course, we did meet with HRM's internal review committee or the technical committee there to gain their feedback as well. And of course, we're also taking into account cost and ease of implementation. So all those options that you just saw will have a more broken down, as you say, evaluation and ranking of how we came to the preferred option. Next slide. So of course, I am here presenting at the ATAC meeting that we have here in February of 2022. Our next steps, of course, we've received the feedback from the HRM internal committee. We have our public feedback. We'll be gaining feedback from you folks today on this call. And we're currently proceeding and moving ahead with the facility of 30% design based on that preferred option you saw, which is that multi-use pathway connection through. Our goal right now is to have something in draft format to send over to Megan and HRM's team in March. And of course, depending on when we receive those comments, we'll wrap that up into a final report, hopefully March, maybe April, because of course time is flying on us. So that's everything. I tried to sneak through because they told me I had 10 minutes. I'm sure I've gone past that, but of course I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Courtney and Megan. So again, let's go through our speaking list, starting this time with Miles McCormick.
Oh, thank you very much for the presentation. It's an amazing area to go to. I run through there a lot, and I think what you've got proposed with 1A, 2C, and 3A, especially connecting Nova Lee, amazing. So I look forward to seeing this continue with its development. Thank you very much for what you've presented.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miles. Paul Berry. Oh. Andrew Taylor.
Nothing from me, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Elizabeth Pugh.
Hi, Courtney.
Elizabeth.
No questions from me. Excellent presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Peter Zimmer.
Yeah. Really very nice. The only question that popped to my mind is the Africville Park kind of a dead end thing, or is there a through passage going further west beyond the park? You know, is there a way to connect if you're on a bicycle, you know, something going up the Bedford Highway?
Yeah, I'll pass that to Megan.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. So right now, the Windsor Street Exchange redevelopment project is underway, kind of right west of the Africville National Historic Site and the museum there. So we've been working really closely with that team to be able to coordinate a potential connection up towards Africville. And they're still in their planning stages where they haven't confirmed exactly what that might look like yet, but yeah, we're in communication about continuing that connection so that you can get, you know, from Barrington, Africville, Windsor Street Exchange up to Bedford. That's the idea.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Alison Carlisle.
I have no questions. Thanks.
Okay, Alison. Douglas Wetmore.
Thank you, Hugh. Peter already stole my question just about the extension to the Bedford Highway. I'll be interested to see what connections would look like with the Windsor Street Exchange, which I know isn't really part of this scope right now, especially when it comes to transit coverage, because I know the transit stop that's connected right now is only really serviced by one route that runs every hour. So if there's connection to the Windsor Street Exchange, suddenly you're getting much more transit coverage and a lot more people being able to not only stop in and go to visit Africville and the museum, but also getting that throughput of people using it as kind of a means of walking through and getting to different destinations. So yeah, definitely put a lot of additional consideration into what a Western extension towards the Windsor Street Exchange might look like. But as far as the plan that you've presented today goes, absolutely loving option 1A, 2C, and 3A. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Douglas. Councillor Kent.
Nothing for me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And Annika Rappel.
Yeah, I would agree with most of the comments so far. I think the idea of connecting west to Bedford is really exciting, both from a transit perspective, but also from a, just connecting the park to an entirely different area. Also really excited about if that connection is made, what that means for connecting to the Barrington bikeway as well. So really kind of starting to see a really beautiful bike route that one could ride from Bedford all the way to downtown Halifax. Wouldn't that be lovely? And then I guess I just had one question around the Novalee part. What would be the factor that would get that part done at the same time? Like, is that a budget issue, or is that just because you were only working on one path?
Of course, we'd love to have it paved and included. Of course, we want to focus on one of those routes and of course, make that a priority. Of course, if there's enough budget, which we always hope there is, of course, we definitely would recommend for that connection to be an asphalt surface just for ease of winter maintenance, as well as, of course, you get some water runoff there. So then you start getting your rutting. So it'd be a better facility as well for future. Yeah, so we will be recommending as an asphalt, but a backup could be, you know, at least to put crusher dust there to make that connection informally for a little bit, and then of course build upon that for a phase 2 or whatnot of a asphalt surface.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And I'm last on the speaking list. I guess my main concern is that whichever route is chosen finally, that you have the same kind of access all the way through. In other words, I think a multi-use pathway is the way to go, and it should be seamless. It should be all the way through rather than any sidewalk section.
Yeah, I agree with you, Hugh. Yeah.
Okay, but that's my main concern. So anyone have any further thoughts, or shall we move on?
We do have Councillor Hensby hanging out too.
Oh, Councillor, are you okay?
He's thumbs up, so.
Okay, then we'll move on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we'll look forward to probably hearing from you at a later stage. I don't know. Is that true? Okay. All right. So we move on to 8.1.4, which is the Dartmouth North Active Transportation Planning Project. And Chloe Kennedy will be presenting. Chloe?
Great. Thank you so much for that, Hugh. Thanks for the introduction and for having me here this evening. So I'm going to share my screen here. Get going. So can everyone hear me and see my slides okay?
Yeah. Well, I can't see your slides.
All right. Oh.
We can hear you, but we don't see your slides.
Sorry about that, folks. How about
yes,
now?
That's good. That's good.
Okay. Oh, thanks for that. As you mentioned, my name is Chloe Kennedy, and I'm an active transportation planner with HRM. And I'll be presenting on the Dartmouth North Active Transportation Planning Project, which I've been managing for about a year now. This project was launched in February of 2020. But because this project did rely a lot on in-person engagement, when the pandemic hit in the spring of 2020, it was deferred for a year. And also there was a bit of a staff changeover. So I've been working on this since the spring of 2021. So as some of you may know, the Integrated Mobility Plan provides direction to staff to deliver the Regional Center All Ages and Abilities Bicycle Network. So this little section that's outlined in yellow is a subject of this planning project. So it's a cycling route that's going to go through Dartmouth North as part of the AAA network. So just to give you a sense of where we are in the project, in the spring of 2021, when I first started on this project in partnership with Englobe and Upland Planning, we conducted an existing conditions report, looking at survey data, traffic analysis, things like that. And then we conducted phase 1 engagement through the summer of 2021 through July and August. Then based on the feedback that we received from phase 1 engagement, we developed some route options, cross sections, intersection diagrams, as well as an evaluation framework in consultation with stakeholders. And then through November, and luckily, early December, we just squeaked in right before Omicron hit. We finished phase 2 engagement, where we took those options back to the public and to our stakeholders to get feedback, and completed our evaluation of the corridor options. So that leaves us here as we work towards 30% design of our preferred corridor improvements. And then sometime this, like late spring, early summer, we'll be putting a recommendation into council. So we just completed our second of 3 technical committee meetings where we had the route approved internally. So now we're moving towards having more detailed meetings with transit and parks to really firm up our facility types and work towards the design of our preferred route. So I'm excited to share that with you today and to get feedback at this exciting stage in the project.
Chloe, this is Andrea speaking. On your Zoom screen, you have like there's a message bar saying that you're sharing your screen. Can you press the hide button on there so that it will disappear because it's partially blocking?
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize that you folks could see that.
Yes.
You think I was some kind of, we use Microsoft Teams internally at HRM, so I apologize for my.
Oh, no worries.
Thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
So this project had two primary objectives. The first was to look at improving conditions for folks who are walking, cycling, and taking transit through Dartmouth North. And the second, of course, was to determine the cycling route and associated roadway changes to complete this segment of the AAA network. And this network, or this section of the network, was to connect the Burnside Greenway with the new bike lanes on Wise Road. So to kind of help you visualize what we're looking at, there's currently a multi-use pathway that joins the Burnside Industrial Park to North End Dartmouth. And that multi-use pathway ends right here where the blue arrow is pointing to on Highfield Park Drive. And just as of the fall of 2021, we now have new unidirectional bike lanes on Wise Road that end at Albro Lake. So that's right here where this blue arrow is showing. So the goal of this planning project is to create a new cycling facility that's going to connect these two pieces of existing AT infrastructure. So just to give you a little bit of a sense of some of to characterize the roadway a little bit, if you're on Victoria Road heading heading outbound or north, after Albro Lake, Victoria Road goes from one travel lane in each direction to two travel lanes in each direction. And Victoria Road does experience some fast traffic. There's one signalized intersection at Primrose between Highfield and Albro Lake. And the streets that are on the east side and the west side of Victoria Road within this green boundary area are primarily local streets. So they're made up of single detached houses and a lot of multi-residential units, especially up through Lehman, Primrose, and Pinecrest. And then taking a look at Highfield Park Drive, if we were to turn right and travel up here, Highfield Park Drive also has a high number of multi-residential complexes, but also a lot of mixed commercial. So it's got a shopping district and some restaurants, also a community center, library, and John Martin Junior High. So because this area of Dartmouth is within the regional center, it's an important part of Halifax's center plan. It was identified in Package A of the center plan as an important center with a strong community hub, but it was noted that the current network and block pattern isolates the center from the surrounding community, and that the future vibrancy of this center will require easy access for pedestrians, cyclists, and transit users. So it's definitely in need of some upgrades on that front. Additionally, Victoria Road between Primrose and Albro Lake received corridor designation in Package A of the center plan. And it was noted that north of Albro Lake, this corridor becomes an extension of Highway 111 and does not include adequate and safe pedestrian infrastructure or safe crossings. So especially in Dartmouth North, we do see a lot of folks who have cycling, walking, and transit use as their primary mode of transportation. For our public surveys that we conducted for our public engagement, we actually see that the modal share in Dartmouth is primarily active transportation users and those taking transit, as you can see in the red, blue, and yellow segments of this pie chart. So from an equity standpoint, it's important to ensure that residents who don't have access to personal vehicles still feel as though they have safe crossings and can travel safely through their neighborhoods. So as we initiated this project in the spring and throughout the project, we connected with a lot of community organizations that have done a lot of great advocacy work to improve conditions into Dartmouth North and who just contribute to the vibrancy of the neighborhood. So we connected with the Between the Bridges group in Dartmouth, who has regular resident roundtable discussions to bring forward issues in the community. So we met with them to talk about current conditions and to consult on our concepts. We also met quite extensively with the Islamic Association of Nova Scotia at their mosque, which is located on Lehman Street. And that's a regional hub for the Islamic community. So we were able to get their feedback and hear their concerns on travel through the neighborhood. Also, the North Grove Community Food Hub is located on the corner of Primrose and Victoria. So they offer a lot of different kind of community programs and a community kitchen. And it is an important part of that community hub on Victoria Road. The library in Dartmouth North on Highfield Drive recently got an upgrade and provides internet access and a lot of different programs. So we were able to host pop-ups and connect with the staff at the library to get their feedback on conditions on Victoria and Highfield. And there's actually 3 schools within this area, but we did connect quite extensively with John Martin Junior High. Back in 2020, when the project was first launched, right before COVID, the students conducted a walkability audit in partnership with the Ecology Action Center. So we were able to reconnect with the students and take our concepts to them for feedback. And I will give a shout out to the Ecology Action Center as well. Their pop-up bike hub in Dartmouth North happened to align with our public consultation that took place through the summer. So they were able to hand out some surveys and, most importantly, help folks fix their bikes. It's a wonderful program that they run. So I'll just share some major themes that we heard from phase 1 engagement. So phase 1 engagement was, we were really aiming to keep the questions broad in the summer, just to get a sense of what some of the barriers to AT were and what the current conditions were like. So a few major themes, we heard that there was a lot of lack of accessibility features, the tactile surfaces, some crumbling curbs that made it difficult for seniors and folks with disabilities to get around. Also, fast traffic on local streets was observed on quite a few locations. There was perceived to be poor connectivity between community destinations, especially on either side of Victoria Road. There was also perceived to be unsafe pedestrian and bicycle crossings on major streets with maybe some more crosswalks needed. And there's also observed to be a lot of speeding on Victoria Road and Highfield, which again are quite wide streets. So based on the feedback that we received from round 1 public engagement, through the fall of 2021, just this past fall, we developed 3 priority routes, which addressed some of these issues. So we took those back for feedback. So just before I get to our feedback on these routes, I'll just really quickly run through these. So the first priority route that we came up with travels from the existing Burnside Greenway down Highfield Park and addresses some of the issues here with a separated cycling facility, and then travels along Victoria Road and then down Albro Lake to connect with the Wise Road at Albro Lake bike lanes. The second priority route that we looked at, instead of coming down Highfield Park, this route actually goes down Lehman Street and then takes a straight shot down Primrose. And then this route introduced a new signalized cycling and pedestrian crossing at Victoria and Farrell Street. This comes through Farrell Park and then down the existing walkway to Wise at Albro. The third priority route, which is zoomed in a little bit here so you can see better. This one was a bit of a network of some local streets. So here we'd have True North Crescent, Farthington, Crystal, Pinecrest, and then this route would have people use the existing pedestrian overpass that's on Victoria Road. So this would involve traffic calming on local streets so that cyclists could share with the traffic. So for phase 2 engagement, which as I mentioned, we just squeaked in late November, early December before Omicron really took hold. We took these 3 routes and also some intersection diagrams and cross sections back to our stakeholders and to the public to get feedback on the pros and cons of each segment of these routes. So in this photo here, you can see a stakeholder meeting that we had at the Dartmouth North Library. So we had 8 residents of Dartmouth North plus the councillor and the MLA. We also met with some advocates groups, so Bicycle Nova Scotia, Ecology Action Center, the Cycling Coalition, to get feedback. We also did a lived experience focus group with the Between the Bridges Roundtable. And of course, we had our surveys, pop-up events. We did presentations to the junior high and the Islamic Association at the mosque. And just to let folks know this was happening, we did a mail out promotion. We mailed out 5,100 letters to folks in the neighborhood. It's very densely populated with all the multi-residential units. So it was quite an extensive mail out, but good to let everyone know that it was happening and how they could provide feedback. And we also installed a few art bikes around the neighborhood with the Shape Your City link, just to let folks know what was happening and how they could provide feedback. So moving on to the feedback that we received on the priority routes. So this route was the preferred route in terms of connectivity and directness for cyclists. Also, what we heard from residents of Dartmouth North is that this Highfield and Victoria especially were their preferred routes in terms of eyes on the street. So after dark, there's still busy roads, they're well lit, so there's more of a feeling of security for pedestrians and cyclists. Bidirectional bikeways were suggested for Highfield Drive and Victoria Road where possible. Down Albro Lake, this little section here, the road is quite narrow, so there was some concern with tree and parking impacts that we had put forward. So for feedback on the second priority route, this one comes down Lehman and Primrose. Lehman had a lot of concerns, especially from the Islamic community, that the removal of parking on one side of Lehman would negatively impact access to the mosque. It is a regional faith center, so you do have a lot of folks accessing the mosque by vehicle. Also, Primrose Street was not preferred, even though it's a pretty direct route through the neighborhood. There's a bit of a steep grade at Pinecrest, so that wasn't a preferred option. But the lower half of this route, the Farrell Street crossing at Victoria, received a lot overwhelming positive feedback, as it was seen to greatly improve pedestrian and cycling access to the North Grove Family Food Center, which is right across the street, the Boys and Girls Club on the west side of Victoria Road, the park. There's some recreational courts and 2 transit stops on either side of Victoria Road with no crosswalk in between them currently. The feedback we received on the third priority route, so again, this is the one that kind of wound through some residential streets. This was seen to be the best improvement for local streets and great for pedestrians, but it wasn't the preferred route in terms of cycling because it was seen to be a little indirect, difficult. One resident referred to it as a ball of yarn, but we did receive a lot of helpful feedback for street improvements to make it safer for pedestrians in terms of more lighting, traffic calming, and that kind of thing. We also developed 8 evaluation criteria in consultation with external and internal stakeholders. So these are the 8 evaluation criteria that we looked at. And these evaluation criteria were weighted, in part informed by the Complete Streets hierarchy from the Integrated Mobility Plan. So that's prioritizing the most vulnerable road users, first and foremost, people who walk, people who cycle, and people who take transit. So through January, we completed an evaluation of the routes based on the results of the What We Heard report, which is available on our Shape Your City page, and also based on our evaluation criteria to come up with our preferred route. And the preferred route is a combination of Route 1 and Route 2. So this is what our preferred route is for the AAA network. So instead of going up Albro Lake Road from the corner of Wise Road at Albro, we're going to go through the Farrell Street Pathway, through the Farrell Park, up Farrell Street to that corner, and we're going to introduce a new signalized pedestrian and bike crossing at Victoria Road, travel down Victoria, and then up Highfield. In a few minutes, I am going to share some suggestions that we will be taking forward to our design engineers for improvements to some of these local streets. Because as I mentioned, we did get a lot of robust public feedback on, Pinecrest and Brule and some Complete Streets improvements. So even though those won't be the subject of our, AAA segment, we're still going to be taking forward that feedback for improvements. So just to finish off, we're going to look at each of these segments in a little bit more detail, and then we'll finish off with some comments and questions. So, as I mentioned, at the corner of Wise Road and Albro, we have the Farrell Street Pathway. So this is a photo of that pathway. So we had a lot of suggestions for improvements to this pathway, including better lighting. As you can see, the lighting currently is affixed to a utility pole, so it's quite high up. So we could have more human scale neighborhood lighting, fence upgrades, and the addition of a bidirectional bikeway beside the existing walkway. So that was our preferred option. But as I mentioned, we do still have some internal meetings to have with our colleagues from parks, from parking and traffic, just to kind of firm up what our facilities would look like, and then do a final round of consultation. So coming up Farrell Street, this is what the crossing on Victoria Road currently looks like. As you can see, there's 4 lanes of traffic, 2 in each direction, and 2 transit stops that currently don't have a sidewalk. So if you were coming up Farrell Street, you'd have to go about 70 meters in the wrong way to Primrose and then 70 meters back. So you do see a lot of folks running across here. So this is a bit of a bird's eye view of what this new crossing will look like. So we've suggested to widen the pedestrian median and to pinch these travel lanes so that the crossing distance is shorter. So we have meetings upcoming with transit to talk about some, you know, the impacts on any transit stops, the lay-by area here. But at this point, this is the preferred crossing that we have. So traveling along Victoria Road after that crossing, as I mentioned, it's an arterial street. It's got 4 travel lanes. There's no on-street parking that would be impacted. And the suggestion that we have now moving forward is the addition of an AT facility beside the existing sidewalk. So we could have a bidirectional bikeway that would extend the length of Victoria Road north until it intersects with Highfield Park Drive, sorry. So this is a bird's eye view of that Victoria Highfield Park Drive intersection. And we received a lot of feedback on this intersection during public engagement. We learned that a lot of school children and families will cross from Trinity Avenue, which is this little cul-de-sac here. They'll make the crossing across Victoria and then up to John Martin Junior High. You can see the ball field here as part of the school grounds. So currently there is desire to have a longer signal time for pedestrian crossings. Our project is proposing to remove this right-hand turn lane to make room for our AT facility to make that corner. That would also shorten the distance that pedestrians and cyclists would have to cross the road, combined with lengthening the signal time. That would really improve access to this important community center with the library, the school, from the neighborhoods to the west of this area. So once we go up Highfield Drive to make that connection to the existing multi-use pathway at Burnside, Highfield Park Drive is a minor collector. It currently has on-street parking. Bidirectional bike lanes were suggested along the south side of the street, which would have some parking impacts. Any parking impacts on Highfield aren't anticipated to be a problem since the multi-use buildings do have dedicated parking lots, as do all of the commercial centers along Highfield Park Drive. There are some upcoming projects being undertaken by transit and strategic transportation planning. So there's some exciting integration opportunities with our project moving forward. So like I said, we still have to have some meetings with our internal colleagues to firm up exactly what this will look like on Highfield Park. But bidirectional bike lanes was certainly a preferred option. So that's a bit of an overview of our preferred route through Dartmouth North. As I mentioned, we do have local street improvements that we'll be putting forward in our report. Some examples of improvements to local streets through the area would be widened sidewalks on Pinecrest Drive. Also adding a little sidewalk section to reach the bus stop at Robbie Burns and Primrose. We heard for a lot of desire for traffic calming through the streets listed above, including, curb bump outs, narrow crossings, speed humps, things like better lighting, street trees, and more accessibility features. So just as a reminder, we're sitting here, which is a fun place to be as we move forward with our investigations into our design for 30% for this section of the AAA network. So with that, thank you so much again for your time and for having me. And here's my contact information if anyone wants to jot it down for follow-up. Also, I have the URL here for the Shape Your City site, where you can find both of the What We Heard reports that outline the community feedback and support for our preferred route.
Thank you very much, Chloe. That's very interesting, and I'm sure there'll be some comments. So we'll start with Paul Berry. Oh, I guess Paul's not with us. Andrew Taylor. Andrew?
None from me, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Elizabeth Pugh? No comments? Okay. Peter Zimmer.
Just to say, I'm very impressed, favorably impressed with the work that's gone into this, and it looks good. Squeezing traffic, making it slower, that's a real appropriate thing.
Yes.
I think one thing I'd throw in on the whole AT thing is you have to get from your front door to wherever the AT path is, or wherever you really want to go. So improving somehow, whether it's the culture of Halifax, to say, really, you shouldn't just expect cyclists on cycling paths, on marked lanes. You got to expect them on any goddamn street in the whole city, because that's where people are going to use their bikes to get from where they are to where they want to be, which mostly is not right on the designated active transportation network.
Yeah, I hear you. And hopefully the local street improvements that will happen in Dartmouth North when the streets are recapped will at least make it a little, we'll slow the traffic down at the very least. And then, you know, adding the dedicated facility along these busier roads will hopefully make things better. But I hear you. It's, you know, as someone who cycles and is a bit of a nervous cycler myself, you know, it is certainly difficult. You know, you do get some car cyclist conflicts sometimes. So there certainly is a culture piece there as well. That's a good point.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Alison Carlisle.
Yeah, just a comment. I mean, it looks good. I think it's great. I was very happy to see specifically in your slides that the evaluation was weighted based on the street hierarchy. It's nice to see it like laid out right there, because it's not always clear that that's necessarily done. So I really appreciate that.
Great.
Okay, Douglas Wetmore.
No additional questions from me. Absolutely love what you've done with Victoria Road suggestions.
Great. Thank you. And I will mention for Victoria Road that there was some concern that adding an AT facility wouldn't quite address the larger issues with Victoria Road. So there is the potential for it to have a bit more of a facelift, a bit more of a redesign. So that could be an integration opportunity down the road. And it certainly will be something that we'll be recommending in our council report. Is that Victoria Road gets, yes, here's hoping. Thanks for that.
Okay. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chloe. I really enjoyed this presentation, and I tell you why. It's sort of a hidden agenda, but not so hidden, is I'm really looking forward to the Shearwater Woodside connection, the whole process. So it certainly gives me lots to look forward to it. And on that, I just want to take advantage of you being here, and perhaps you could comment. That is the next one on the list, right? And when can we expect that to sort of start to get off the ground? Because you guys, it looks like we're getting close to where this one will be at least a place for budgets to now be attached to, and then a whole process will start elsewhere. So I'm just curious, do you know anything about that?
Ooh, that would be a great one for David McIsaac if he's still on the call.
Yeah, probably would. You're right. I would agree. I kind of put you on the spot on that.
Yeah.
On that
no,
one.
Okay. I'm just not sure. It's a great question though. That's going to be a real nice improvement to the Woodside Trail.
It certainly is. And Mr. Chair, just want you to know, the wind is really picking up here. I'm having some flickering, so if I lose you guys, we're almost at the end of the agenda anyway. Just don't be surprised, because I'm kind of waiting here on that. David, are you out there?
It's windy here, so
yeah.
I guess that could happen to any of us. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
David.
It's a little bit. Yeah, sure. I just to let Councillor Kent know that we're still advancing Woodside Shearwater, and you know, I'm not sure we'll have a presentation exactly at this stage next month, but definitely by the spring is where our target is right now. So more to come on that one.
Okay, very good. Annika Ropel.
Hi. Yeah, obviously I've talked to Chloe about this a lot, so I'm excited to see it again. It's always it's exciting. I really wanted to commend Chloe and the rest of the staff on the engagement around on this project, particularly having worked with the newcomer community for 4 or 5 years. I know that it it's often a group that really gets missed. And I just think that HRM did a really great job with the engagement. So, and I think it's reflected in this plan. And I also think to pick on what Peter was saying too, like the local streets improvement alongside the bike path just really shows that you're caring about the residents who currently live there, and not that you're building a bike highway through neighborhoods. And then that allows people to get from their homes onto this connector. So yeah, really excited, and really excited about the bike path and sidewalks options as well, which I know has been talked a lot about from the blind and low vision community as being a really important factor to have sidewalks separated from bike paths. So that's exciting, and I hope there is space for them.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that, Annika, and thanks for all the engagement that you folks helped us with this summer at the with the pop-up bike hub, and for the feedback that you and also Allison Carlisle had provided in the designs. It was really, really helpful. So thanks for that.
Okay, Miles McCormick.
Thank you. I really did enjoy the presentation, especially regarding traffic calming and lighting. The engagement in the community was strong, and I just really enjoyed seeing it involve students. One thing perhaps I know would be also something to consider for the future, involving the high school students. Not all of them are from that community, but there's a good section. And I think it's just another way to spread it through the community and have people from other communities utilize what's going to happen in that area there. So really well done, and long overdue, especially that hub around Highfield Park and Victoria Road. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Miles, and great suggestion to go to Dartmouth High maybe and talk to those folks.
Yeah, there's a lot. They have a lot to offer. Like I said, it's my old stomping grounds, that school. But that's why I know a lot of people did not come from that section, but they come from other parts. But it's the connectivity that I'm thinking about from the other parts of Dartmouth that would work their way between the bridges. And I was really happy to see they involved John Martin students from there too. So thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Miles.
Good. I think Councillor Hensby is left. Is that right? Just a comment from me then. Like most people, I'm impressed with what you've done and the outreach, and I'm also impressed that in fact the recommended route, the selected route, is to me the one that makes sense, because it's the most direct and presumably also is reasonably cost effective too. But I also liked the fact that it went through Farrell Park, because I think whenever it's possible to go through a green space and still have a direct route, that's preferable, because in fact for walking and bicycling, it's nice to have the green space rather than dealing with traffic fumes and traffic noise. So I like that aspect. So with that, are there any other comments? Okay, if not, we will. Okay, we move to item 8.2, which is any reports from committee members. We don't have any of those. Also, item 9 was added items, and we have none of those. So we're on to item 10, and that is date of next meeting. And it's set for March the 17th, but it turns out that is school spring break. And if that's a problem for one or more people in the committee, we could consider changing the date. But if it's not a problem, then it's not a problem. So does anyone have a particular problem with March 17th? Okay. Well, in that case, we will continue as scheduled. So with that, we can move to item 11, which is adjournment. And all I need is a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.